What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 31 preview. So, I'm going to go through some of the key questions and topics that you've put to me on Twitter, give you my opinion, latest information, latest updates, all that good stuff. Give it a like if you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. And we're going to start off with a Trent Alexander-Arnold update. Now, this has been quite interesting because before the break, it was that he could be out for a while. Then it was back for Man City. Then it was back for Watford. Then it was back in full training. Then there was reports that he wasn't actually back in full training. And this is what Klopp has actually said today on Friday. So he said Trent trained yesterday. So he has been training yesterday, but only in parts, right? He's only gone back to full training today, which is Friday. We have to see what we do with it. He went on to say it will be tight for tomorrow because obviously Liverpool are playing the first game of the week, 12:30 against Watford. But it's possible. With our rehab and fitness department, it was really intense what he did before he trained with us. Physically, he should be fine. That's a key point. But now we have to make a decision about rhythm. Now, that's an interesting point because I spoke about with Cancelo. I think most FPL managers right now, they're looking at Liverpool playing against Watford, Man City playing against Burnley, and Chelsea playing against Brentford. That if you're going to rest players, that is the game to do it, right? They can win those games without their first choice 11. I'm not saying they rotate the whole team, but if you want to give some players a break, i.e. players that are just back from injury, that will be the game to do it. But rhythm is something that managers talk about quite a lot. Klopp's just talked about it. Pep talks about it in the past. And how you might want to actually get them out into an easier game where maybe the intensity and the physical workload and stuff just isn't as bad before you go into a game that is like that, i.e. Champions League, i.e. having to play Liverpool and Liverpool and Man City against each other twice. So I don't think it's guaranteed that he misses tomorrow, but I own him, and I'm thinking he probably doesn't play. The only downside is if you play him because you've got a good bench, like I'll have Tierney on my bench, for example, he could come on and it could be a cameo. So there's a few certain scenarios. It is the first game tomorrow, so we might get the lineup. For me, I'm probably not going to sell Trent regardless now. I just think it's just one game. It is the best game for the next 3 game weeks. So I can see why people are thinking about selling him. My only issue is, if I sell him, it will be for Robertson, Cancelo, or Reece James. And am I that much more confident that they're all going to start tomorrow? And if they don't, well, then Trent's back fit from Game Week 32. Like, Klopp has pretty much said he'll be fine for Benfica in the Champions League. So from Game Week 32 onwards, he's going to be available. So he's probably going to play a decent amount of minutes. So I think because I want him from 34 onwards anyway, and I'd play him against Man City, I'd play him against Man United, I'm probably just going to bench him. If we find out he's not starting against Watford and you're wildcarding in Game Week 34, I still think it's worth cashing in for a different defender. Again, all the ones that I've mentioned. Or you could go down to a really cheap player like Roberts, for example, at Burnley, who have got 5 fixtures in the next 3 game weeks, and just use that money to fund a really differential move like Bruno Fernandes or Cristiano Ronaldo. I know people will kind of turn their nose up at that, but Man United have got Leicester, Everton, and then a double game week that involves Norwich. Yes, the extra game's Liverpool, I get that, but if you're dead ending before you wildcard, why not do that? Why not use the cash from Trent and then buy him back? Right now, it's probably going to cost you about 0.5 million at most to buy him back. Very unlikely he's going to go up in price. That kind of screws you over by Game Week 34. He might not drop too much more if he's fit, but if you think you're going to be able to afford that on the 34 wildcard, I'd probably do it. But in most cases now, I don't necessarily, because there's a chance that he will start, I don't think it's worth probably selling him. I think if there was no Champions League to worry about and stuff like that with James and Cancelo, etc., I would just do it. And if you're confident or you know that these players are going to start, it might still be worthwhile. But I just think there's a chance he plays against Watford at home. It's one of the best fixtures you could have all season. I'd probably just keep him. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through every single possible defender we could bring in and talk about what was said in the press conference. But obviously, Reece James was out of the last game through injury. So Tuchel has said today that Hudson-Odoi and Ben Chilwell will miss the game tomorrow. Callum has some lower back problems. Everybody else was training. And then I think he was specifically questioned about Reece James. And he said, ready to go, yeah. Reece is in the squad for tomorrow, right? So he's fit. He's back in the squad. I mean, I saw some Chelsea fans on Twitter speculating that maybe the injury wasn't quite as bad as it was made out to be, but they wanted to rest him over the international break. Possibly like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who knows? They've got important matches to come up, leagues to win, Champions League games to try and get through. Maybe that's what they did, right? Who knows? But he's in the squad. So he's fit enough to play, you would imagine. He didn't specifically say that, but I'm going to guess that he probably is. He had a lot of time off over the last couple of weeks to try and get back up to fitness. But again, can I sit here and tell you he's definitely going to start tomorrow? Absolutely not. What I will say is I've been stuck between Cancelo and Reece James, and I'm kind of siding towards Reece James right now. I'm not saying that won't change by the deadline tomorrow because I do think it's pretty close, but I'm not sure I'm any more confident in Cancelo starting in game week 31 than I am Reece James. And if I think that both of them have maybe got a chance of just starting one game over the next two, bearing in mind Cancelo is much more likely to start against Liverpool, you would imagine, well, at least Reece James has two good fixtures in game week 31 or 32. So if he gets a cameo in one and a start in the other one, that's probably better than risking Cancelo getting a cameo in game week 31 and then possibly playing against Liverpool where I would expect him to concede. The other thing that's kind of in the back of my mind is I think the English clubs left in the Champions League have all got a pretty good chance of advancing to the next round, but you would imagine that Chelsea's tie against Real Madrid is a bit more difficult than Liverpool against Benfica and Man City against Atletico. I just think the way Atletico played against Man United, Man City will cope with that, and they should, over two legs, they should go through. Whereas Chelsea versus Real Madrid, I think they've got a really good chance of going through, but you'd say it's the hardest tie. So if they go out, well, suddenly Chelsea don't have much to play for apart from the league. And obviously they have still got an FA Cup semi-final against Crystal Palace. So you'd imagine they're going to get through to the final as well. But losing those European games would be big for the league. So it's almost like hedging my bets a little bit that if he and Cancelo both start one game over the next two, Reece James has got better fixtures for those two. And also he's got a little bit of a higher chance, I would say, of going out of Europe. I think when you get kind of, I'll just bring up the fixtures, when you get a bit kind of further into the season, I mean, there's not many games left, obviously. They've both got pretty good fixtures. Like from 34 onwards, West Ham, this is for Chelsea obviously, West Ham, Everton, Wolves are the next three. Yes, they got Man United to play, but the other three fixtures are Watford, game week 38, and then Leicester and Leeds games to rearrange. So they're pretty decent. Now, obviously, if they stay in Europe, the rotation for Chelsea players towards the end of the season is going to be crazy. So I might regret the Reece James move. And it's similar with Cancelo, to be honest. Like the fixtures are great. Watford, Leeds, Newcastle. I mean, ideally, you'd have both of them by game week 34, and that might be something that we work towards. West Ham, Villa, and then they've got Wolves away to rearrange as well. But again, if they're still in Europe, there could be further rotation later on. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong here. I'm probably siding towards Reece James. For what it's worth, I don't necessarily need the extra money that creates because I've got other ways to do the transfers I was talking about in team selection yesterday. But ultimately, Reece James back in the squad. You'd assume he's fit to start. Will he start? Will he not? I've got no idea. Same with Cancelo, same with Trent. There was quite a few questions about Ramsdale. I know people have got different goalkeeper combinations. There was a few with Ramsdale and Dubravka. I know some people have got Foster instead of Dubravka, maybe Sarr instead as well. But ultimately, we want to talk about whether it's worth selling Ramsdale, right? Now, he's not necessarily a long-term doubt. From what it sounded like from the press conference and what I saw a couple of journalists tweeting about before the press conference, is that he's a doubt for Monday, so that's the game against Crystal Palace, but then after that he's probably going to be fine. So the chances are that he's only going to miss one game, which is Crystal Palace. That's not guaranteed, but that's what it's looking like right now. So if, for example, if I just bring the fixtures up, if, for example, you had Dubravka, you'd have to play him against Spurs away. Obviously, if you've got Foster, you've got to play him against Liverpool away. That's not looking great for a clean sheet. But after that, the fixtures aren't that bad, especially if you've got Dubravka, right? Wolves at home, then a double game week, Leicester at home, Palace at home. Or if Ramsdale's back fit, you could just play him instead in his double game week against Southampton and Chelsea. Dubravka's also got Norwich in game week 34. And if you look at like kind of game week 35 onwards, it's not great for Dubravka. But Arsenal's fixtures are West Ham, Leeds. They got Newcastle as well and Everton. So they're not too bad. So I think if you weren't already kind of looking to sell Ramsdale and you've got Dubravka in particular, or even maybe if you've got like Jose Sarr, his fixtures aren't completely awful either as kind of a backup keeper. That's what you need to look at. If you have to play your second keeper for the next 1, maybe 2 weeks, how happy are you about that? If you don't think it's that bad, you can just keep hold of Ramsdale because chances are by the time the double comes around in game week 33, he'll be fine and the fixtures afterwards aren't that bad. If you are not sure or you really want to cash in, I don't think it's a bad time to cash in on Ramsdale. Again, depending on who you've got as your second keeper, you'll have to look at kind of fixture rotations and stuff like that. But either going for Nick Pope, especially for those on wildcard in 34, I think Nick Pope's got 5 fixtures in the next 3 game weeks, he's the obvious choice. You could look at Pickford and Schmeichel as well. I don't think there's necessarily a lot between them. They've all at some point got the extra fixtures to kind of rearrange or have already been rearranged, and some fairly decent kind of single game weeks as well. It's all going to depend on who your second keeper is. So if you've got Dubravka, for example, which a lot of people might if they wildcarded in game week 26, someone like Pickford actually rotates quite well, and you actually play Dubravka quite a bit now, and you play Pickford later on. And I know obviously Everton defence hasn't been great, but then neither has Nick Pope and Burnley, right? So it all depends on what you're doing. If you wildcard in game week 34, I quite like Ramsdale to Pope, especially if you've already got a double. Pope will obviously double in 33 as well. If you've not got the wildcard, you might have to think a bit longer term and just look at the kind of fixture list, or the fixture rotation. But ultimately, Ramsdale's a doubt for Monday. It didn't sound like it was going to be much longer term than that. So who's your second keeper? Are you happy to play them? If you are, you don't necessarily need to get rid of Ramsdale. So a lot of people are looking at this. I know I've already spoken about Trent, but let's answer a specific question. Can Robertson cover Trent for the rest of the season? If I go Robertson, I can also have Cancelo and James. So if that literally is what's going to get you Cancelo and James versus, I don't know, one of those plus a much weaker defender, then yeah, I think going for Robertson looks like a pretty good choice. The same thing I said earlier, though. There's no guarantee that Robertson also starts this week. Again, I would probably assume that he would, but obviously Tsimikas is there, and if Klopp does want to rest them in the easier game, then I think Tsimikas can do more than like hold his own against Watford at home. So he's not guaranteed to play. And I guess in that scenario, if Trent's benched and Robertson's benched, which has happened already this season against Norwich, I think, if that happens, are you then going to be happy that you've made the transfer? Because then it's almost like Robertson and Trent have to fight it out with the exact same amount of fixtures for the rest of the season. For what it's worth, if we know that Robertson's starting, or it seems likely that he's going to, I don't think it's a bad move. I think if you were punished heavily, like losing kind of 15 to 20 points by making that transfer before the end of the season, you could probably consider yourself quite unlucky. I just think Man City's probably not worth much to either of them anywhere. I've already spoken about the Man United game as well. And then you're just looking at like game week 34 to 38, just battling it out. And I'm not sure, like Trent is the better option, right? There's no point in trying to kid yourself that Robertson is better, but that is a big kind of drop in price. So if it lets you make a good improvement to your team, like a genuinely good improvement, and possibly it is only going to be kind of, let's say they do concede to Man City and Man United and they both miss out against Watford, or even better if you make the move, right? Robertson starts and Trent doesn't, then you're probably going to be up on the deal by the end of the season. I don't think... It's just one of those moves. Of course, anything can happen in football and FPL. Like one player can absolutely massively outscore the other one, even though they're quite equal. But ultimately, I just don't think you get punished too much by that move. So if you need the cash, I don't think it's a bad choice to cash in on. But I would kind of want to make that decision as late as possible, just in case we get some Trent and Robertson news, which would then sway your opinion about making that move. All right, let's forget about defenders and Liverpool for just a second. How much of a priority should getting Kane in for Son be? Now, the short answer is the priority for making this move is much less than it was in Game Week 30 and Game Week 29, I would argue, because Game Week 29 was a double, and Game Week 30 was obviously a captaincy reason. People took hits to do Son to Kane. It didn't work out that week. Maybe it will long term. But I do think that captaincy is a very big, important point for making this move, because my opinion just doesn't change too much with these players. I actually think it's pretty close between Son and Kane. In any given week, I would always choose Kane to be the highest scorer over Son. It doesn't always happen. Game Week 29 it did. Game Week 30 it didn't. But I'd always choose Kane. So if I was wildcarding right now, I'd have Kane. If you gave me the option to switch Son to Kane, then I probably would. But again, there is a big difference in price. It's about 1.5 million. So captaincy has to be, for me, a key reason why I'd go out and make that move. And I just don't see me captaining either of these players very much over the next few weeks. Right? So if we just take a look, and obviously things could change. There could be rotation around Europe with the teams that are still there, like Salah for Liverpool, for example. But again, as people keep saying, the title race is wide open between them and City. I don't see him getting many minutes off, as he hasn't for most of this season. So this week, Spurs have got Newcastle at home. Pretty good, but Salah's playing Watford at home. So let's be real, most of us are going to go for Salah. So no captaincy there. Possibly in Game Week 32, Spurs play Villa away. At the same time, Liverpool have got Man City. Now, again, a few weeks ago, people were saying, well, remember what Salah did against Man City in the reverse fixture? The captaincy kind of poll that I did in the breakdown video the other day seems to suggest people have forgotten about that and they're looking to captain Kane. So he probably is going to be fairly highly captain. But again, as a 1 week shootout, would I be so worried before a double game week in 33 about spending transfers to do Son to Kane? Probably not. In game week 33, if I just bring out Spurs fixtures, Brighton at home, it ain't that bad, right? You could captain them if it was a single game week, but it isn't. There's a double game week. So Saka's got 2 games, Southampton away, Chelsea away. I'd probably rather captain him than Son or Kane. You got Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo with Norwich and Liverpool. Again, I'd probably rather captain them than Son or Kane in 33. That's my choice. Obviously, if you think that Kane's the best captain for like 2 or 3 of the next 4 weeks, get him in, right? But I don't think that's what most people will think. And even when you get to like game week 34, when they play Brentford, in game week 34, Salah's got Everton at home, so it's at Anfield. Salah, I'm going Salah again. So I don't think there's really any time that I'd really like where I think Kane is just the absolute standout captain for much of the rest of the season. To be honest, like game week 35 is Leicester at home, and Liverpool have got Newcastle away. Newcastle improved, sure, but I'd still probably back Salah. Game week 36 is very likely to be a double game week, and the double game week that Spurs have is, I think, Liverpool and Arsenal, so it's not even that great. And then game week, just to go through to the end, game week 37 is Spurs versus Burnley. That's quite good. But again, Salah's got Southampton. I'm going Salah. Last day of the season. Okay, Liverpool have got Wolves. Spurs have got Norwich. At that point, Norwich could be down and out. We know what Harry Kane can be like against these type of sides towards the end of the season where he's trying to rack up the goals. That might be a genuine option to go Kane over Salah against Liverpool, because Wolves can be at times tough. So for me, maybe game week 32... and maybe game week 38 is when I'd want to captain Kane. For the rest of it, I'm probably looking at Mo Salah for most weeks. Without going into full details, there might be games where Man City players are good captains, etc. But I don't think there's too many weeks where Kane's the standout. So to go back to the question, the priority for me is much lower to do this move now. I'm not saying I won't do it, because I've actually worked out a transfer plan where the switch could happen between game week 33 and 34. But that's more to do with who else I want to bring in, who else I want to get rid of. It's not that I'm in a rush to get Harry Kane. It's just that's how the transfers work out. So I've already eyed that Norwich game in game week 38 as a possible captain, but that's weeks away. Who knows what could have changed by that point. So yeah, to answer the question, the priority, in my opinion, is quite low right now, especially when there's a 1.5 million price difference. Okay, so this question is about the game week 33 dead end, right? So what players to target if you're dead ending into game week 33? So this is where you would just make transfers with just game week 31, 32 and 33 in mind. You don't care what's going to happen for the rest of the season because you're wildcarding in game week 34. And I actually did an article for 888 Sport this week. There's a link in the description below. And I talked about the game week 31 versus 34 wildcard, and I talked about dead ending and stuff in that as well. So if you want a bit more of a written format, there's a link in the description below. But ultimately, there's a few. I mean, most of the players that you should probably be looking at are players with extra fixtures, right? That's the whole point of doing this dead end thing. So these are probably like 6 that I could come up with. I'm not saying like Reece James, Cancelo, Robertson, they could all still be good options. But realistically, if you're trying to maximize points, I'd probably just go for the extra fixtures and then just hope for the best. So again, like I said earlier, Man United have got Leicester this week. Defense hasn't been great this season, although the defense they're putting out now is better than what they've had for a lot of the season. It is worth saying that. I still think they'll concede though. Then it's Everton. Like Lampard just hasn't really got them going at all so far. Let's see what happens in that game. And then they've got Norwich and Liverpool in the double. And then obviously you don't care about them, right? Because you're wildcarding in game week 34. This is for people that are doing that. So I think you make your choice with Fernandes or Ronaldo. I think we always put Fernandes' minutes a little bit higher. Obviously, there was the double game week in 25 where he just about outscored Ronaldo. But again, it's come out from the press conference today that Cavani's injured again. Surprise, surprise, after he played. I think he played one game in the international break and then came on in the other one. Now it's back for Man United. He's out. So I think Ronaldo's minutes will be pretty good. And I think if they were both to play against Norwich and Liverpool, they were both to start those two games, I probably would favour Ronaldo. It just then comes down to how easily can you get these players in. So, for example, for me, I've got Son instead of Kane. So it's just easier for me to switch him to Fernandes rather than going to Ronaldo. I might change my mind by 32, 33 and actually end up going for Ronaldo before switching him to Harry Kane. Who knows? But I think Man United players are pretty decent. If you want to go a bit cheaper, you know, you got Sancho instead. But I do think these two are just better than Sancho. But 8.9 million, he's not a bad option either. I don't really know too much about the defence. I just don't think it's probably worth going there. And then obviously you got the two Leicester boys, Barnes and Maddison. I guess keep an eye out, because you don't have to buy all these players this week, right? You've got 32 and 33 to look at as well. Keep an eye on the defence. Keep an eye on how many minutes James Justin gets, for example. Because if he keeps starting, he could be a nice little differential versus the rest of the crowd. Because the fixtures for Leicester in Game Week 33 are pretty good. You don't necessarily want to rush out to get them this week because it's Man United away. But you could maybe look at the defence as well, possibly Schmeichel. But if you are going for a goalkeeper, I think you've got to go for Pope if you're dead-ended. I don't think there's any question about that. He's got 5 fixtures in the next 3 game weeks, and it's the same for Weghorst as well. I know they're not that exciting. I know it's Burnley, but they've got 5 fixtures in the next 3. I just don't see why you wouldn't go for them. And I'd even be tempted, depending on who my goalkeepers were, to just take a hit and get Pope in. Because, you know, especially if you've got like Ramsdale, for example, might miss 31. And yeah, okay, he's got the double in 33 as well. But Pope kind of guarantees you that extra game time, save points and stuff like that. So these are probably the primary 6 if we're looking at double game week players. Like I said, there's still single game week players that might be worth it. Son, Kane, for example, if you don't own them. Cancelo, Reece, James, if you think they're going to get enough minutes. But I like to look at the double game weekers. And what I would do is strongly or have a proper look at who you're going to captain in Game Week 33. Because it's not necessarily an easy choice. And if you do want to go for Ronaldo or Fernandes and you don't want to go for someone like Saka, then you need to start thinking about how you're going to get them in. So these would probably be my kind of top 6, I'd say. So nobody really asked me about this, but I was thinking after I did the team selection video yesterday, if I was going to go for Cancelo, and I still wanted to do the Son to Fernandes move, I needed to make 0.2 million. So Sarr to Pickford is one way that I could do that, because Sarr is 5.2 million to sell for me and Pickford's 4.9 million. And obviously Pickford has the extra game this week. For what it's worth, right now at the time of recording at least, I'm siding towards going with Reece James. So this isn't an issue for me, but I'm still tempted to take the hit. Now I haven't put individually which fixtures each goalkeeper's playing, but if you bring Pickford in, so this is for people with Pickford and Dubravka. Pickford only plays this week, and he doesn't play again until game week 35, which is the Chelsea at home game. I think Dubravka's got like Liverpool at home or something like that. So it's a pretty tricky fixture either way. But for a lot of us, we've got Sarr and Dubravka. So I was trying to work out whether it's worth it, especially if you've got one free hit left, because you're probably going to use it in Game Week 33, where Dubravka plays Leicester and Palace, or you're going to use it in Game Week 36, which would be Pickford against Leicester away and Palace at home, right? But then obviously you get the much better double in Game Week 37 of Brentford at home, Watford away, and then Burnley away to finish it is Dubravka again. So it's whether or not it's worth the hit over just playing Sarr. So let's say that I do free hit in Game Week 36, then essentially it's Burnley away and West Ham away this week instead of Villa at home. I would say there's a good chance that Pickford outscores Sarr this week. I know they've been poor defensively, I get that, but I think with save points and stuff like that, I think it's a pretty good shout. And then obviously after that, it's Dubravka for the next 3 weeks against Wolves, the double in 33 and Norwich away. Brighton at home, Chelsea at home, obviously Sarr wins that. And then we'll skip Game Week 36. Then Game Week 37, Brentford at home, Watford away, has got to be better than Norwich and Man City. And then you're back to Dubravka again. So I think for that extra fixture in 31, the better fixture in 37 over Man City. And obviously if I do end up free hitting 33, then Pickford has a better double game week or a better set of fixtures in 36 as well. So I think it might be worth the 4-point hit. The only thing that really worries me is that Brighton at home game. But outside of that, I don't think there's too much to worry about losing Sarr, especially when I'm going to play Dubravka a few weeks anyway. So if you are someone that's looking to sell Ramsdale, or you're wondering whether to get Nick Pope or Schmeichel or Pickford in or someone like that, this is what I would do. Go and look at how the fixtures marry up and how often you're actually going to play the keeper that you bring in. So for me, for Pickford, it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, and if I free hit one of those weeks, it's actually only 3 weeks that I would play him for the rest of the season. But I still think the -4 might be worth it. I still think there's a chance that he outscores Sarr. The reason that I've picked Pickford instead of Pope is that, yes, Pope's got an extra fixture this week, but one of them's Man City, and in game week 33 he doubles again, but so does Dubravka, so I'm not that bothered about having Pickford. And it's similar with Schmeichel, he just doesn't rotate that well with Dubravka, but Pickford does. So I didn't want to go into loads of different goalkeeper rotations because people have got different combinations, different chips and stuff like that, but I just wanted to kind of run through my thought process about what I'm kind of looking at when I make that move. I'm basically hoping for Everton to stop being rubbish, and I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I think I'm willing to take the risk to get another double game week player this week. We'll see. But I think because I've got 2 free transfers, I'm talking myself into it. It's only a -4 for 3 new players. Why not? It's a little bit of fun. Anyway, I thought I'd end on that, talking about bringing Pickford in, because why the hell not? I literally could bring in this week Weghorst, I tweeted this, Weghorst, or I'm not expecting to score too much, Pickford, or I'm not expecting to keep many clean sheets, and possibly Reece James or Cancelo, who I don't even know if they're going to start, and that is FPL right now. So let me know what you think about those moves in the comments below. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I will be back tomorrow for the... what's it called? The deadline stream. It's been so long since we've done one. So I'll be live for that tomorrow on Saturday morning. Thank you for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.